shows in the picture, it shows the kids like with their in like a really fancy room with like a TV in the room and with their like computers playing in the room and their fancy beds.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you go in there, it's just a regular like 1960s room with like white concrete walls.
Yeah. I mean, I love this classroom, but this classroom. This would be the part where I need to make sure that
It's kind of slid.
this classroom would never appear in a KCD brochure. Why not?
It's just, and it's all white.
There's no windows,
right?
Plain. It's plain classroom. I mean, it's not plain, but there's no windows in here. There's no natural light in here, right? This is not the best classroom to showcase KCD, right? Now, it might be the best teacher to showcase KCD. But it's not the best.
You love yourself too much.
But it's not the best classroom to showcase the KCD. Drew, real quick, and then we're going to move on.
I found Barack Obama knows how to purple class.
Good job.
Is that what you've been doing for the last?
That's.
I mean, I found
Yeah.
I would love to know why. So the Great Leap Forward doesn't work so well. An estimated 18 to 40 million people die. I know that's a real big estimate, but estimates really do range if you research this. Most of the estimates, I say the average tends to be in the 30 million. If 30 million people really did starve to death from lack of food, then that makes it the biggest starvation in human history, mass starvation in human history. The only thing that comes close, and listen carefully here, the only thing that comes close is the Irish potato famine.
Oh, I've heard of
Oh
that.
yeah.
Where a million people died. So how can I say that a million people dying comes close to this 30 million people dying?
I was that potato.
Alex?
A million people don't die every day.
That's true, but it happens go over the same sort of course of time. So how could I even compare a million dying to 30 million dying, Max?
Well, maybe like 30 million is just kind of huge. Wow, like
1 million.
I know, but like if you just compare like say the best NBA player to the worst NBA player, what you don't realize is the worst NBA player still is good enough to be in the NBA.
So a million people dying is still really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Charles, what else?
And China, well, they have so many people that the percentage of people that they use is about the same amount for the people that they use.
Bingo. The Irish potato famine with a million people dying, Ireland was so small population-wise that was something like, I believe, around 12% of their population. When 30 million people died in China, now obviously that's way more people, but the population was so big that that amounted to about 6% of their population. So it is the most people to die in a starvation event, and it's the worst one ever unless you go by percentage, and then that's Ireland. Imani.
I thought that the Great Leap Forward was Chairman Mao was going to increase food. So how come so many people died from starvation?
Oh, good question. So this is the next 4 or 5 things here are the why. If his whole plan was to increase food production, how then did so many people starve? Well, there's several factors, and historians disagree on which one's the most important here. But certainly weather played some role. There were floods and droughts that ruined the harvest. A lot of people like to say, not Mao's fault that the floods and droughts came. But then other historians say, yeah, but there's been other floods and droughts in history that didn't kill 30 million people, right? So it couldn't just be weather. But weather was the thing. Bad reporting of food amounts. So the way this system works, remember, communism, you have to share. And what Mao wanted was for the communes, he wanted them to send food to the capital, much like Hunger Games. And then the capital would make sure everybody in the country got food, including factory workers. And some of these communes would over-report the amount of food they had produced. Why would you want to lie and say you made more food than you actually did, Alex?
Because it makes you look good.
Makes you look good. Look how amazing our commune is, Chairman Mao. Don't you love us? We produced 100 million pounds of food. Right. So let's look at how this worked then. So if a commune lies and says, we made 100 tons of food, and Chairman Mao gets that report and says, 100 tons of food, that's amazing, good job you guys. We need you to send 60 tons of food to the capital for redistribution. What if in real life they actually only made 80 tons, not 100 tons? Now they have to send 60 and they leave 20 left for themselves to eat. So what actually happened is by lying and saying they did more than they did, they could either step forward and say, oh, we lied, we didn't actually make that much, which they didn't want to do. They didn't want to be punished for lying, right? And they didn't want to look like they were doing their jobs. Instead, they would just send that food and like have less there. So there wasn't good information about how much food there actually was. People were lying and making it seem like there was way more food than really existed. Come on.
But then wouldn't he like come and like actually see before he said to like, send it off?
Well, keep in mind, no internet, no Instagram, right? It's not like somebody could say like, look at all the food, right? Somebody would actually have had to go out there and check.
So then like
right?
how would they calculate it if they didn't have like,
Just the commons would self-report. They would say what they got, right? You might imagine this like, I mean, this happened here in America. Our earlier example today. Hey, bankers, tell us how much money you made this year, and if you didn't make enough, you might even lie about it or something, right? The next one on there, what does it say? The next one. I'm sorry, I lost mine. Charles, what do we got?
Well, I have a question.
Oh yeah.
Until the next
Oh, what would happen to them if Chairman Mao figured out that they, didn't?
That's a good question. I'm really not sure if people got punished or if they just got like, oh, well, do better next time. I really don't know. All I know is that people generally over-reported, apparently because it made them look good. Some crops actually rotted in the fields. Because so many people were put on factory work and steel production, there weren't enough people to actually harvest all the crops. And so some crops just didn't get harvested. This is a really big one, this term saving face. It's important in Chinese culture to preserve your ego. And everybody knows this about China, if you live in China, even to the point of sometimes lying in order to save your pride, right? Chairman Mao had been going around saying how amazing his plan was going to be for a long time. So instead of saying, oh, whoops, I messed up. Hey, U.S., could you please help us by sending us some food? He refused to do that. John F. Kennedy was ready to, the American president was ready to give China food to stop the starvation. Chairman Mao wouldn't, he didn't want it, he wouldn't take it. Made China look bad, like they were wrong. China owed some money to the Soviet Union. Chairman Mao paid them in food. He could have kept that food for his own people, but he thought that would make China look bad. He wanted to save face. He even said, there are some documents where he said to other top officials, look, if a few million people have to starve in order for us to show the world that, you know, we're not wrong, then so be it. So really this you know, we're gonna make sure people think we're right. We're gonna pay our debts even if we have to suffer for it, because we don't want to admit that we were wrong. The saving face is a really big deal. The last one, some officials just didn't believe the reports of starvation. The communes would say, hey, we're starving out here, and in the capital they might say, oh, come on. How many times have you heard someone say they're starving when really they're just hungry? Right? You guys do it yourselves. I'm starving. When is lunch? Right? So the people in Beijing would say, oh, starving? I think what you mean is you're hungry. You're not really starving. Again, there's not Instagram or internet where you could actually send pictures of starving people to prove it. There had to be someone actually, yeah. Just say hashtag what?
Hashtag I'm starving.
Hashtag I'm starving, yeah. You couldn't do that back then. Somebody would have actually had to go verify that people were starving before they would do anything about it. One more thing that I didn't put up here that I want you to add. I like this one. Pests. So, there's a pretty famous thing that happened. Sparrows have been hurting the crops by eating them. And so Chairman Mao started an ad campaign to get people to kill sparrows. He would have, sorry to be sexist, but he would have ads, posters of boys going out with their slingshots, killing sparrows. And he would actually be like, this is your patriotic duty. If you want to help China with food, go kill the sparrows because they're destroying our crops. He forgot to take something into account.
Of course. The food chain?
The food chain. What's wrong with this, Alex?
Taking something out of the food chain means something else is going to die as well without that food.
And
Or
then
not
something
die.
else.
Or not die.
Like,
Or
sparrows,
something
what if I
like
told you
that.
sparrows eat bugs? What do you think
Bugs
happened to the harvest?
because, like, the bugs,
They were eating
the
bugs.
bug ate
The bugs destroyed the harvest. So even his solutions, okay, the sparrows are a problem, let's go kill the sparrows. Even his solutions were not very well thought through. They had a 4 pests ad campaign that didn't really help. So at the end of this, just a couple minutes more, you guys, hang in there. You're doing a nice job. At the end of this, Chairman Mao is, he doesn't ever admit he's wrong because he wants to save face. But he steps back from power for a short time and then he decides he would like to regain power. And instead of saying, oh, whoops, I was wrong, or, how can we learn from this? Instead what he did is start blaming other people. It wasn't me, it was the selfish people that were the problem. After all, you starving farmers, you know how hard you worked. So it couldn't be that you didn't work hard, it had to be someone else's fault. Probably the rich people who kept stuff for themselves, right? And he starts something called the Great Proletarian. This comes from that word proletariat that we saw a few slides back. Cultural revolution. He wants people to root out capitalism. Get rid of people who believe we should compete because they don't have the greater good in mind. And you know what? He really targeted young people. And I apologize, I don't want to offend you, but he targeted young people because they're easy to persuade. If you think you're not easy to persuade, think about why many of you wear the same things, buy the same clothes, because you want to like fit in and do what you're told. The older you get, the less you will probably care about that stuff. But he realized, if I could get the young people to be in support of me, I'll be in good shape. So he started this army basically called the Red Guards, kind of like the Boy Scouts. But girls could be in it too. And the Red Guards usually were teenagers who would travel around the country telling everybody how amazing Chairman Mao was and punishing people who disagreed. So if you were a person who used your brain to think for yourself, you might be punished. You might be even taken out in the town square with everybody watching and be told how wrong you are and be embarrassed. Because remember, in China, saving face is really important. So to embarrass you in front of everyone is to lose face, not save face. It really is the other term. And that would be really bad, right? Also, teenagers at this time were great to sort of persuade, because if you're a teenager in 1966, that means you were probably under the age of 10 in 58, 59, 60 when the Great Leap Forward was happening. So even if you knew about all that starvation, you were probably too young to really understand it. Just like in America, if in September 11th, you were maybe only 7 or 8 years old when it happened, you would remember it happening, but you probably don't really understand why. So those are the perfect age people to convince why, or maybe even brainwash and say, you know why that happened? It happened because, and you can make up any explanation you want, and that 7 or 8 year old will probably believe you, especially if you repeat it often enough, right? So if that doesn't work, you have some other options here. You can force people to go to struggle meetings, re-educate them, say, you know, you're thinking too much on your own. Go to this class where you will learn about how communism is good and capitalism is bad. And if you still don't like it, we're going to send you to a labor camp. Maybe what you need is to go out to a farm and work like a farmer, and then you'll understand the value of hard work. And then if that still doesn't work, the option of flat-out punishment, torture, and death is always a last resort option. Alex?
How did they root out capitalists? Like, did they just kind of like, oh, you're being too capitalist, we're going to punish you?
Yeah, it's your patriotic duty to tell on anyone that has nice things, because they shouldn't have nice things, really. In the book Red Scarf Girl, Charles, are you reading Red Scarf Girl?
Yeah, and I'm confused. Well, I know there's something that they call people capitalists.
Mm-hmm.
So father's a landlord? What is that?
People who own big chunks of land. Too much land to farm by yourself, so the only way to really farm it is to hire other people to do your work for you, right? And if they don't like that.
And then, I was kind of confused. We never talked about this with this, but I know that Chairman Mao, he wanted to have everybody take out all the 4-O's and bring in the 4
That's anything that he thought was bad. Basically, he's just blaming something for the failure of the Great Leap Forward, so that people will still like him, right? So, new ad campaign, everyone. We got to have a new one so people like Chairman Mao. Mostly young people in this campaign. Teachers had this book that they had to read from in class, the Little Red Book, and the teacher would say, Okay, class, today we're gonna read the wise words of the wonderful Chairman Mao. And if you're like 8 years old and your teacher says that every day, what are you gonna think about Chairman Mao?
Chairman Mao's like a
He's
superhero.
cool, he's wise and wonderful, your teacher said so, right? Kinda like
Teacher
Columbus.
never lies.
So we see
No,
something,
that teacher
criticize
lies.
the old world, criticize those selfish people, bring a new world of Mao Zedong thought. Whoops. Hold high the great red banner, red is color of communism, of Mao Zedong thought. Smash the rotting counter-revolutionaries. Notice here in black and white we have some people that they're smashing because they obviously have the wrong type of thoughts and ideas, right? These people have their right thoughts and ideas. Working class people, men and women, in these ad campaigns. And I love this, there was even a sort of cult of Mao, like Mao worship that happened because of all this propaganda, making him seem like the best thing ever. He's like the sun, he's like a god, he's bigger than everyone else and everyone's supporting him and everyone's happy, right? If you open a Google image search and look up Mao propaganda, you're gonna see, feel free to do
He's
this,
always bigger
you're
than
gonna see
everybody.
tons of posters like this where Mao is in it and he is bigger than the other people. He is surrounded by light or in front of the sun or like the sun. And there are thousands of these posters that were all over China. So if you're a little kid growing up in China and this is the kind of stuff you see all the time, you're gonna love this guy and think he's amazing. And if anyone tries to tell you different, they are in danger of being punished. So you might not hear anyone tell you differently, right? Come on.
Okay, so you know how you said that the teachers, they'll tell the little kids that, you know, like Mao is really
Yeah.
like wise? Do they know the truth and they just like say that so that they won't get punished?
Yep,
and
so I don't lose my job. Right.
So they actually know then that people
Many of
starve.
them did, yeah. Some of them agreed, but many of them didn't agree but did it anyway because they want to lose their job.
I think you skipped one.
I've noticed that for all these ads that you've showed us,
Uh-huh.
they've gotten kind of darker, and I don't mean that like literally, but in the beginning they were more kind of like
Happy.
blue
You're
and
right.
orange and yellow, but now they're like red and black.
Absolutely. In the early years of these ad campaigns, it was much more bright colors. Yay, don't you want to do this? In the later years when he's trying to regain control, he goes